August Winters knew he shouldn't have taken the forest road at this hour. Autumn nights in Silver Ridge were dense, damp, and far too quiet, holding an uneasy stillness that clung to the air. He turned onto the narrow, tree-lined path that snaked its way through the woods. The old pickup's headlights barely cut through the mist, illuminating the glistening asphalt and curling tendrils of fog. The faint drizzle smeared across the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. His destination was clear. Pick up his sister Cassandra from her friend Layla's house. It was 6:34, and he muttered under his breath about being roped into this favor. When he pulled up to Layla's yard, Cassandra was already waiting at the gate, standing unnaturally still in a long hooded coat. The hood cast a shadow over her face, making her appear almost statue-like. Even from the truck, he felt a chill creep up his spine. She climbed into the back seat without a word, her movements slow and deliberate. "Hey, Cass," he greeted her, trying to keep his tone light. "You okay?" She didn't respond. Her silence was louder than the rain tapping against the roof. "How was Layla's? You two watch a movie or something?" he asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Still nothing. Her hood obscured her face, but he could see her head tilt slightly, as though observing him, or his neck. "Don't just stare at me, all right? It's creeping me out," he said, forcing a chuckle that did nothing to lighten the mood. The forest grew darker as the road wound deeper. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches arching overhead in skeletal shapes. Tension wrapped itself around August like a cold, wet blanket. The pickup's radio crackled to life as he turned it on, filling the car with faint music. But even the familiar sound felt distant and unwelcome, as though the fog outside absorbed every note. Glancing into the rearview mirror again, he froze. Cassandra was staring directly at him, her eyes gleaming faintly in the dim light. But she wasn't looking at his face. Her gaze was fixed on his neck. "Cass," he said, his voice catching. "What's going on?" She didn't reply. Instead, her tongue flicked across her lips, slow and deliberate, in a way that made his skin crawl. "Enough, Cass," he muttered, turning his attention back to the road. "Just sit there quietly, I guess." By 7:13, they arrived home. The rain had stopped, but the dampness in the air was thicker than ever. August parked in the driveway and got out, the chilly night air biting at his skin. He turned back to see Cassandra still sitting in the truck, unmoving. "Cass, we're home. Let's go," he said, irritation creeping into his voice. She tilted her head slightly, before opening the door and stepping out, her hood still shrouding her face. He sighed, relieved that she was finally moving, but the tension in his chest lingered. As he reached for his phone in the console, it vibrated in his hand. The screen lit up with several missed calls and texts. 6:34 p.m. "August, where are you? You're late." 6:36 p.m. "You're not answering me. Are you okay?" He stared at the screen in disbelief. His phone now read 7:14. His head snapped up toward Cassandra, who was already heading for the house. Unease curled in his stomach, a deep, gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong. Inside, Cassandra was nowhere to be seen. "Cass?" he called out, his voice echoing faintly. No answer. A soft creak came from the far side of the house, and he froze. His pulse quickened as he stepped toward the noise. Before he could reach it, movement outside the window caught his eye. Peering through the glass, he saw her figure, hooded and small, walking toward the forest. "Are you kidding me?" he muttered, grabbing a jacket and storming out after her. The night swallowed him as he followed her shadow into the woods. The forest was alive with whispers, though no voice could be pinned down. The damp earth clung to his boots, and every snapped twig made him flinch. "Cassandra!" he shouted, shining his phone's flashlight ahead. Her figure emerged briefly in the beam, standing just beyond the reach of the light. She didn't move. "Cass! Come back right now!" he yelled. She turned slowly, the light catching her face. Her hood had slipped back, revealing her wide, gleaming eyes and a twisted smile. Cass. Her body jerked forward, then stopped, as though her movements weren't entirely her own. From her throat came a guttural sound, low and primal. Behind him, a branch snapped. He whipped around, the flashlight shaking in his hand. Nothing but trees and mist. His breath quickened as he turned back to where she'd been standing. She was gone. "Cassandra!" he screamed. A heavy silence pressed down on the forest. On the porch of Layla's house, the real Cassandra checked her phone, scrolling through unanswered texts. 7:34 p.m. "August? Where are you? I'm still waiting." From deep within the forest, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly. But it wasn't August.